Going on, guys? We went from 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds in terms of the NFL. We went from no news to too much news. So we're going to break it all down for you tonight, so hang tight.
Fantasy football, you dealing with the best. Keep it hype, authentic, this ain't nothing like the rest. With the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, give advice for all the listeners to improve your stats. Yeah, we live on goingfor2.com. Tuesdays and Fridays, this is what you want. Talking dynasties and daily drafts, and we just getting started, that ain't even the half. Yeah, so go ahead, tell your friends to join. Going for two, cause no one remembers the extra point. Ayy, goingfor2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show.
What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 138 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can always follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Presented as always by goingfor2.com. You can find us live every Tuesday and Friday nights on Periscope, Facebook Live, and YouTube. Of course, streaming in all your major podcast networks and on the Going for 2 app for iOS and Android. I'm here as always with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. Ryan, how you doing tonight, man?
Fantastic. I mean, we had the most exciting sports we've had in a little bit now today. And last 2 days, this free agency's been absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Like I said, we went from 0 to 60 in no time at all. We went from having no sports, nothing to talk about other than the coronavirus, to having all this stuff to talk about. So definitely going to make for a good show.
It's fantastic.
All right, also joining us, he's a return guest. I think this might be his third or fourth straight year coming on the show. Mr. Miguel Chapeton from the Fantasy Headliners. Miguel, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good, man. Good. Haven't had you on in a while, man. I know our season didn't end quite the way we wanted it to.
That didn't, but hey, that was a way better season than you and I both expected.
Yes.
So, not too many people make it to the end. It's only two teams, so one's got to win, one's got to lose.
I agree. I think it's funny, though, how the media and Facebook and Twitter somehow treat us as the runner-up as, one of the worst teams. It feels like, they just kind of kill us on media like, hey, we were still the number 2 team in the NFL. Give us a break.
Right. We beat 31 other teams. That's something.
Yep, exactly. All right, guys. Well, we got a jam. What was that?
It's good to be back on with both of you.
Yeah, glad to have you back on, man.
I feel outnumbered now.
Well, you're a Ravens fan, so you probably always feel outnumbered. You're a Ravens fan in Pittsburgh, for that matter.
It's the story of my life. Always outnumbered.
All right, so we got a jam-packed show, like I mentioned, lots of things to get to. So we're just going to go ahead and just jump right into the news and notes from the past 2 days.
News and notes from around the league.
And we'll start off right at the top with the trade that basically kind of set everything off yesterday. Kind of caught everyone by surprise with DeAndre Hopkins, of course, going to the Cardinals, and David Johnson going to the Texans. Ryan, we'll go to you first on your thoughts on this trade and what you think of it for fantasy purposes.
Well, if the trade went down in my fantasy league, I mean, I don't believe in vetoing, but I'd probably think about it. It was a bad trade. Like Bill O'Brien, I don't know. But fantasy-wise, I think it's kind of a lateral move for DeAndre Hopkins. He's a guy who's going to get volume regardless, and he may not have the chemistry built up with Kyler that he's had with Watson. But the pace of their offense, I think, will make up for that a little bit. I think it affects all the surrounding cast more. I think it's a huge upgrade for Kyler Murray. He was throwing to old man Larry Fitz, a beat-up Christian Kirk, and a bunch of nobodies last year, and still killed it and finished top 12 in fantasy. I think this is a huge upgrade. It puts him in the top 5 for me. I think it upgrades Christian Kirk. I think it's going to take a lot of coverage off him, and I think he's built to be that kind of volume guy underneath. And we've seen guys produce with Hopkins there, so I think it's good for them. And then Houston-wise, I think it's a downgrade for everybody. Except for David Johnson, because he's now the de facto lead back there. So he should get the volume, which will give him fantasy value.
Yeah, I feel like Houston has kind of become the place where running backs go to die. I mean, Lamar Miller went there and kind of, was just an okay running back for a couple years. And then Carlos Hyde goes there, and he's an okay running back. And now David Johnson's turn. Miguel, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what Ryan just said. That was a pretty awful trade all around, and that's what Bill O'Brien's been doing. I mean, it's like 6 straight trades where we all pretty much can look back and say, yeah, he lost all of them. Um, I mean, yeah, that wouldn't even pass the sniff test in a fantasy football league. But yeah, I think for Hopkins, it's pretty much going to be a lateral move, as Ryan said. The volume will make up for probably any lack of chemistry, but I think they've got plenty of time between now and the start of the season to get all that going, barring coronavirus wiping out the entire offseason. But as far as David Johnson, man, I don't know. Is he completely washed up, or is this finally like his last hurrah? He's gonna have like one more good year in him, and then like we're absolutely done. Like we're very close to the end with David Johnson. It's just whether or not we've already seen it, or whether or not he's got like one more good year in him. But as far as the rest of the Houston team goes, I think I tweeted it out last night, or I was going to. I delete so many tweets before I send them out. I can't remember, but I would want Watson if he comes at a massive ADP discount. And other than that, that's probably about it on that team. There's nothing there right now. The cupboard is bare. I don't know what Bill O'Brien's thinking with that team. But I do think it's going to be a big help to Christian Kirk because now he kind of gets some coverage off of him. He can dominate in the slot while, the CB1 will be covering Hopkins. I'm still kind of curious how this is going to play out with Fitz still in town. Like, I completely forgot that Fitz was still there when they made this trade. I was like, oh, all right, this is going to be awesome for Kirk. It's going to be Hopkins and Kirk. And then someone was hearing about, and Larry Fitz. I'm like, oh, that's right, he's still there. How's that going to play out? So we'll see how it goes. But I'm super excited for the Arizona offense. That should be a fantasy boon for all of us who play. But Houston is definitely a team where I'm going to own very little, if any, players from that team.
Yeah, I agree. Unless they go into the draft and get one of those top-name receivers, I don't know if there's anybody I want there. I mean, I don't want David Johnson. I think his ADP will be inflated a little bit. I wouldn't think he can have a bounce-back season. And, those receivers, Will Fuller, Kiki QT can't stay on the field. You got Kenny Stills still there, I believe. Nothing there really excites me. I mean, and even with David Johnson, I mean, Houston has shown that they're not really committed to the running back in general. I mean, I know Carlos Hyde had a decent season. It was a decent NFL season. I wouldn't think it was a great fantasy football season. Everyone got excited when Duke Johnson went there because, he's the back that can do it all. But they didn't even use him the right way. It was just it's just crazy how they don't use the running backs there much in Houston.
No, they don't throw to him barely ever. Like, Watson hates checkdowns for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. I think he just wants to
chuck it up. Or
Bill
O'Brien does.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that could be it too. Yeah.
Yep, good point. All right, let's move on to the other big name receiver that move here. I think, coming into this free agency season, I was kind of like, oh, this is going to be sort of a down season, so to speak, because there wasn't any huge names as far as fantasy goes moving. But then we get these couple of trades here, then all of a sudden everything's flipped up on its head. So Stefon Diggs to the Bills, Miguel, what do you think of this move here for Stefon, and then for the Vikings' sake too, with him moving on?
Oh man, for Diggs, this is a big blow. I know that Josh Allen supported John Brown last season and got him into the top 24 season, so there's some hope that he can hang on. But I think his ADP this offseason was already pretty high. Mm-hmm. I want to say he was like number 12 wide receiver off the board.
Sounds about
earlier
right.
This offseason. And so that's really high. And I don't know if he's going to stay there. I'm sure he's going to drop now, which he needs to. It's all going to be an ADP thing for me. But if he's lower end of the top 24, so maybe 20 to 24 in ADP, maybe I take a stab there. But man, as far as dynasty goes, he's got to be a sell. He's the one guy that I had on one team last year, and I sold him, and I was happy to get out a year early because right now he's just not going to be someone you can sell for a whole lot. I'm not a big believer in Josh Allen. I think a lot of his warts kind of got covered up last year. He had a lot of easily interceptable balls that cornerbacks were just dropping, and if that flips this year and all of a sudden he's looking more like Jameis Winston, then there's going to be really big question marks and uncertainty in Buffalo. So, yeah, I'm out on Stefon Diggs going forward. I think he's given us everything he's able to at this point, and it's time to cash out.
All right, yeah, I agree with you at 100%. I think that Diggs' value definitely goes down, takes a hit quite a bit. Ryan, let me get your thoughts on the Viking side of things. Because you got Thielen there, who had a down season. He was hurt for a lot of the year. Then you got two young guys there, Chad Beebe and Bissy Johnson. Any interest in buying Adam Thielen or one of those two younger guys?
Not that much. I think Thielen is gonna hurt a little bit without Diggs there. I know they have that great running game that should help, but Diggs takes a lot of coverage off. He's done a lot with a few targets, and I don't think there are other receivers on their other starting receivers on their roster yet. For to be honest, I think they're a candidate to draft somebody who could take that 1B role or 2 role, or however you want to look at it. So it's not a huge. I think it's not a huge dip for any of them, but it's still a little bit of a dip. And so I'm a little bit opposite on Diggs than you guys are. I think we've seen him play with mediocre at best quarterback play for how long? I mean, I know Kirk Cousins is efficient, but Kirk Cousins doesn't really sling it down the field.
Good point.
And go for those big plays. And Diggs has been a big play guy for them when it's happened with his run after catch ability. I think it could be something good for them. I may try to buy him if people are down a little bit, but I'm not putting him in my top 12 at the moment.
Right. It all comes down to cost at the end of the day. So we'll have to see where that ADP settles in, how people view him. But yeah, I'm mostly out right now just on initial reaction.
Yeah, I think definitely at his current ADP, I think he definitely loses value. But if he drops enough that he becomes a value at that point where you can buy him for cheap, then yeah, I might be in on Diggs. Because like you said, John Brown was relevant last year in that offense. So if Diggs can be a top 20-ish receiver and he drops an ADP, he could be worth picking up for sure. And he's still pretty young too.
John Brown was what wide receiver last year, 14 or something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
He's pretty hot. And he's nowhere near as good as Diggs.
Yep.
And you mentioned about Winston. Yeah, Winston was Winston at 30-30, all that bad stuff, but still produced fantasy receivers.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Interceptions don't really matter to us as long as they're throwing to our receivers. So as long as he's chucking the ball down the field, who cares if he throws like 10 picks? All right, let's move over to the Cleveland Browns. They made a big splashy move. No one saw this one coming. Austin Hooper signs to the Browns. Miguel, will go to you first this time since Ryan's dog decided to make an appearance. So give us your thoughts on Austin Hooper in Cleveland.
I think this has to be a good thing. They clearly targeted him and wanted him early in free agency. Was he the first guy to sign?
Yep.
Second guy to sign? Something like that. So that tells you something that they wanted him that badly. The Browns didn't use a tight end last year, but this is a whole new coaching staff, whole new regime. So we honestly don't know what this offense is going to look like, but the fact that they put their chips in and on Austin Hooper is the best evidence we have that he's going to be used and used a lot. So I like this move. I think he's going to I've seen some negative reaction to this. I think a lot of people are still looking at how David Njoku was used and thinking the Browns are still going to be the Browns. So I don't know what that's going to do to his ADP, but I still like Hooper as a top 12, maybe even top 5 tight end.
Yeah, I mean, in this tight end market, I think he can definitely be top 5 because there's not a whole lot out there that really gets you excited. What do you think of David Njoku? What do you think they do with him? You think they keep him around? They try to move him?
Man, if I was a team right now, I'd be sending offers for David Njoku. You could probably get him for like a 5th round pick or less.
Yep.
He is someone that I would be targeting if I was a tight end needy team. I don't know who comes to mind right now. Maybe Green Bay. Oh no, I guess they got Jay Sternberger. Jacksonville. Yeah, Jacksonville could definitely use a tight end. But he's someone that they're probably going to trade. I don't see him sticking around unless they're moving to a 2 tight end format, and we just don't know that yet.
Right.
If that's the case, then that changes the whole narrative here on Austin Hooper. But I think that's just information we don't know yet.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Ryan, what are your thoughts on this?
I agree. I think Hooper still could do pretty well there. And Njoku had a decent amount of targets when he played, but he had a horrible catch rate. His hands were super unreliable, and that makes you not go there. Hooper showed nothing but but being a reliable or tight end for Matt Ryan when he has the chance, I think it's good for him. I don't think there's going to be huge volume, but tight end's so touchdown dependent, and you don't need a ton of volume to be top 10. I think he still has a good bit of value for it. And, man, I hope Njoku gets traded. Because I think he's kind of a fade now.
I do too.
Where do you...
But, God, imagine if Seattle hadn't signed Olsen.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, that would be...
I like it for Baker, though, a lot. I think that gives Baker a great target and somebody he can trust and get the ball off to when his two receivers are covered.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Baker gets an upgrade there for sure. In Njoku, are y'all trying to buy Njoku in fantasy if you think that he might possibly get traded to a better situation? Are you trying to buy him, Ryan?
I mean, I'm buying if I can get him for like a late third or fourth, probably.
Okay.
But there's a chance if beginning season starts and he ends up being cut by fantasy owners. You can definitely see that with guys who aren't patient, especially when they need roster spots. A backup tight end is the first thing to go.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point because he will be the backup tight end there for sure with Austin Hooper getting all that money. So he could.
Yeah, if I get him as a throw-in on a real deal, and just be like, oh, I guess throw in David Njoku, maybe. Yeah, I think I think that's the way to get him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's not someone you're going to go out and target necessarily, but if you got a deal in place and you just need that one little piece to even that deal up, I think you can get Njoku thrown in there and make it a pretty good trade. All right, let's move on to one of the quarterbacks that landed into a spot here. Phillip Rivers, kind of the worst kept secret in the NFL. He lands with the Colts. What does this do for the Colts offense as a whole, Miguel? What do you think of Phillip Rivers being there?
I mean, this has to just be an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. I mean, Jacoby Brissett was like your ultimate game manager.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Phillip Rivers is 37, 38 this year. So, I mean, you're not getting the Phillip Rivers of old, but you got to think it's at least an upgrade over Brissett. So this should do wonders for their offense. It should elevate them a bit. It's only a one-year deal, so from a Colts fan's perspective, you know, you're not locked in for a long time, so you can easily draft a quarterback to develop. You know, I've been thinking maybe Jake Fromm could go there, and maybe they get something out of that. So, you know, we'll see, but I think this is going to be a good upgrade. This should hopefully help buoy, Paris Campbell's stock back up. T.Y. Hilton should be locked back in as a wide receiver one. Phillip Rivers tends to lock in on his one wide receiver. It's what he's done with Keenan Allen for so long. But at the same time, Phillip Rivers has actually never supported two top 24 receivers. I believe that's accurate.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, so are we looking at T.Y. Hilton and then that's it? Right. So bye-bye Paris Campbell?
Well, technically, I guess
we'll
maybe...
see. It depends on how they use Paris.
He may have had a top 24 receiver if he was a receiver. Antonio Gates, when he was there as a tight end, he probably could have fit into that wide receiver, top 24. So I wonder if a guy like Jack Doyle's got any kind of value bump.
Right, yeah. If they use Paris Campbell a la like Deebo Samuel, where he's getting his rushing ability and his short yardage passing, and he's able to use his yak ability, doing all of that, then Paris Campbell might have some good value here that we can definitely use. But otherwise, yeah, you're looking at T.Y. Hilton, and that's probably about it.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts on Rivers being there?
I agree with basically everybody he said on that. One guy I might keep an eye on is with the running backs, specifically Nyheim Hines. He has a very similar skill set to Austin Eckler. And he could be somebody who could be that dump-off safety valve for him. I think that could be really, really good. And that could be the way for him to break out a little bit, especially because he can play out of the slot. He can play all over the place. And he's a fantastic receiver out of the backfield, almost to that extent.
That's a really good point. So basically then it's going to be T.Y. Hilton, and then you're going to have to bet on, are you putting your chips on Paris Campbell or Nyheim Hines, because they basically cannibalize each other.
Yeah, that's true.
They really do.
So take the cheaper one of the two, and there you go.
Yeah, it's funny that you said you kind of compared him to Austin Eckler. I have a guy on my Dynasty League that owns Nyheim Hines, and after his year 2 years ago, he was all excited about him. And then, of course, Andrew Luck retires, and Hines kind of falls off, doesn't catch as many passes last year. And then when this Rivers situation happened. He went, on Sleeper, you can nickname your players. He nicknamed Naheem Hines the Walmart Austin Eckler. So he's kind of thinking the same thing.
He's got the Walmart colors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He's moved up the Costco brand now.
That's Yeah, and I was looking at Brissett's numbers just to kind of go on how much of a game manager he actually was. Over his last 9 games, so pretty much more than half the season, he only had 4 touchdown passes. That's not good, not good at all. Especially for a team that was playoff worthy and all that. So I think that Rivers definitely upgrades that. I think the fact that Rivers will have an offensive line for once. I mean, how long have we been saying that for him there? Going even back to San Diego, then to L.A. I mean, they've had a terrible offensive line. So the Colts got a great offensive line. He'll have time to throw at least. So that could help him out with some of his turnovers. I know he's a turnover machine sometimes, but with that offensive line, he'll have a lot more time than he's used to. All right, let's stick with the quarterbacks here. We got, I'm going to do a double whammy here. We got Tom Brady going to the Bucks. And then, of course, that means Jameis Winston is on the outs. So give me your thoughts first on Brady, Miguel, and then tell me where you think Jameis Winston might end up.
Well, I think this is going to be good for Brady. He's got the best weapons he could ask for that he's maybe had in a while. Outside of a Julian Edelman. So now you're giving him Chris Godwin and Mike Evans on the outside. You've got O.J. Howard at tight end, Cameron Brate too, if you're a Cameron Brate fan. Ronald Jones, still a bit of a question mark, but who knows? They might upgrade the running back position there. It's all going to be, and he's going to be in a high-octane offense where they're supposed to throw a lot. I mean, Arians does not deviate from his offense. This is going to be Brady going into the Arians offense, not Brady trying to come in and change the Arians offense. That's not going to happen.
Right.
It's never happened with Arians. You come in, and he just plugs you in, and you do it as you're told. So we might see Brady throw more passes than we have in the last few years.
Yeah.
So this should be good. You're not going to have the super errant throws and questionable decision-making of Jameis Winston. From a fantasy perspective, Jameis was kind of a god. He elevated Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on a weekly basis to just put up ridiculous numbers.
Yep.
Now you might have more of a balanced approach. We'll see. But I think overall this should be a good thing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even if it's only short term, and it might only be even for this year, to be honest. Who knows how quickly Brady falls off? He's old.
Yeah, exactly. My biggest worry with Brady is he's always had that where he's quick release, get it out of his hands fast. The defense couldn't get to him, so now he's got this offensive line that's not very good. He's got this Arians offense, which is a down the field kind of passing game. Is Brady going to be able to take them hits and stand in the pocket and get hit, over and over and over again at his age? I'm a little bit worried about that. So I don't know if they kind of, come up with something to get the ball in his hand a little bit faster, or if they utilize the tight end a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to kind of see that. What are your thoughts, Ryan, on this situation?
With the line thing, they better get him a running back who can catch the ball a little bit. Rojo's a little bit questionable with that.
Agreed.
But, no, I think it's, again, a lot overblown that Brady can't push the ball and do that anymore. He just didn't have the guys to do it with last year. I think, no, he's not going to force the ball to Mike Evans 20 times a game, but he won't have to because he's a more accurate quarterback. He's more efficient. I think it's a good thing for that offense, and I'm not really going to change any of my rankings for either receiver at all. Maybe it sparks that hope in O.J. Howard again for me.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. What does it do for O.J.?
I've already been thinking about that third-year breakout and all that, and now Tom Brady loves tight ends and is the most. And he was getting compared to Gronk when he came out of the draft.
Yep.
All this crap, and I'm just it sparked that hope in O.J. Howard again, and I hate it. I hate it so much, man. Because I want to move on.
What are your thoughts on Winston? Like, where do you think he might end up? Do you have any idea?
Honestly, I don't, especially with the next thing we're going to bring up with Cam Newton, which I heard a couple rumors about a few minutes ago. But, I mean, there's not that many spots left you need a quarterback.
Yeah.
There
aren't.
He could go to Chicago where him and Trubisky are both prone to turnovers. He's better, but they're both kind of that same vein. He could go to the Chargers or the Patriots. Who else really needs a quarterback?
Yeah, good point. I was thinking.
You can already pencil in.
Go ahead.
Burrow, Bengals.
Yep.
Jags. Like, there's just not many options.
Yeah, I think his best option, at least from a fantasy standpoint, might be to go to the Chargers, just because he's sort of like a younger Phillip Rivers in the sense that he just chucks the ball over the field. He's got some good receivers there, so I think that he can elevate Mike Williams. He can make Keenan Allen continue to be good there. So I think the Chargers would be the spot that if I own Jameis Winston, I'm kind of hoping that he goes there. Chicago's offense doesn't look like it's going to be able to support that kind of fantasy production. You said the Jags, same thing there. I don't really trust that offense too much. So if I want to put him somewhere where I think he's going to have fantasy value, I want him with the Chargers. What are your thoughts on that, Miguel?
No, I agree. I think the Chargers are his last best bet. I don't think he's getting a starting job this year, just because there's nothing left. I mean, you have to start penciling in those rookies to teams. So, as Ryan said, you got Burrow in Cincinnati. You're going to have Tua, where maybe Washington, which means Haskins goes somewhere else. Or you got Tua in Miami, so he's not going to Miami. From a fantasy perspective, if you're looking for him to elevate and give you amazing production for a few wide receivers like he did last year, then you're hoping for the Chargers. Otherwise, he's going to be a backup quarterback somewhere, and you're just waiting for his name to get called and see what he does. I mean, he's the younger Fitzmagic. I mean, that's who he is, which is so funny because they both shared the field together just a couple years ago. But that's exactly who he is. He comes in, he puts up crazy stats, but he's a turnover machine.
Yep. Yeah, he's definitely a better fantasy quarterback than he is real quarterback, because I don't think we worry, as much about interceptions in fantasy. I mean, I know it does hurt a little bit, but it doesn't hurt when he's putting up those monster, 5,000-yard seasons and 30 touchdowns. We don't care as much. But in the NFL, you can't turn the ball over that much. It's just not conducive to winning for sure. All right, sticking with the quarterback theme. Ryan, we'll go to you first on this one. You mentioned Cam Newton there. He was supposedly a mutual agreement to be traded. Apparently, he came out on Twitter and it wasn't mutual. They basically just said he's going to be traded. What are your thoughts on Cam Newton and where he might end up?
So go to Miguel first real quick.
All right, I'll go to Miguel first. Miguel, give me your thoughts on Cam Newton, where he might end up.
Well, it looks like he's definitely on the outs, right? Seems like Carolina's pushing him out the door. So, Cordell Patterson is out on Twitter right now looking for a quarterback for the Bears. I don't know if you've seen that, but he's been recruiting 3 different quarterbacks.
Really? I didn't see that.
And has struck out, which is really interesting. That must tell you how Mitchell Trubisky is viewed and valued and respected in the locker room.
Yeah.
So the Bears would be an interesting landing spot for him, especially with a creative head coach that they have. But again, I think you're looking at the Chargers as his best bet from a fantasy production. I think he can go and he can help out a Keenan Allen as well as a Hunter Henry. We've seen him do that with Steve Smith and Greg Olsen.
Good point.
So I think that's where we'd like to see Cam Newton go. His rushing ability would also help the running backs there. Austin Eckler may not catch as many dump-offs anymore, but the lanes might open up a bit more for him on delayed handoffs and things like that. So, I think that would probably be the best spot for him. I think San Diego in general as a city for Cam Newton is kind of a cool landing spot for him.
Yeah.
He's kind of got that swag, and San Diego's kind of got that vibe. So
good point.
I think overall, that would be a really, really good spot for him. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, let me throw you another team that could potentially be there, and this is kind of near where I live, and they've talked about it on the radio a little bit. What about him reuniting with his coach here in Washington, putting Haskins back on the bench to learn from Cam Newton and having Cam Newton as a starter here in Washington, D.C.? What do you think of that?
Oh, wow. I didn't even consider that, but yeah, the fact that they've been throwing around Tua's name, whether that's just to generate trade interest for that number 2 overall pick or not, who knows? But you're right. His old coach is in Washington. It would keep Cam on the East Coast, where he's clearly made his home. So that would be an interesting spot. You got Terry McLaurin.
Yep.
Is that about it?
That's about it. Starts and ends there, pretty much.
Darius Geis, if pray to the Lord that he can stay healthy for once. I'd love to see what he can do. But yeah, that would be a really interesting choice.
What was that, Ryan?
I said Geis was supporting Haskins on Twitter today.
Was he?
Well,
Yeah,
he was being a good soldier. That's good.
he was.
Yeah.
He's saying we already got our quarterback.
Right. So, yeah, that would be an interesting landing spot for him. I think more exciting. I'd rather see him in San Diego.
Agreed. I think for purposes of fantasy, I think San Diego's probably. You're saying San Diego. You got me saying San Diego. L.A.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You know what? They don't deserve to be in LA. They need to go back to San Diego.
Good call. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you think Cam ends up?
So there's a rumor swirling that two teams have pulled his medical records already, or like requested them, and it was Patriots and the Chargers. Chargers, like he's saying, makes a lot of sense. Anthony Lynn wants to run a quarterback. They have weapons in place. They kind of have a win now roster almost.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But yeah, I think either of those are. I think that spot makes sense. Another team we haven't really talked about, who's a possibility, could be the Raiders.
Yeah.
Bring him in Las Vegas. He's a big name face at that new stadium. They don't want to roll out there with Mariota or Carr. That's just not it, man. So that could be a team who no one's really talking about, who I kind of should have brought up for Winston too. But they could be an option as well. But if I were a betting man, I'd say the Chargers trade for him.
Chargers.
And probably for a really good price.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably the best bet for him for fantasy purposes as well. I think Chargers right now is probably the best bet for any quarterback out there that, for as far as fantasy goes, that's left over that needs a quarterback. I think it's going to be the Chargers.
Yeah, it's talented. It's a talented roster, man. There's a lot of good receivers and players there.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the team that Cam Newton's going to be traded from. Teddy Bridgewater is reportedly signing with the Panthers. What does that do for their skill players, Ryan? What do you think of Bridgewater there?
I think it makes the good ones there a lot better, and I think it hurts Samuel. So I think it's really, really good for DJ Moore. He works all those underneath routes. They get him the ball short. They last from the run after the catch. I think that's perfect for him and what Teddy Bridgewater does. He's not really a guy who's pushing the ball. Curtis Samuel's that deep threat. He has that high A dot, and that's not Teddy Bridgewater's game right there. So I think it's more of a detriment to him. I think DJ Moore's going to shine. I think he's going to be locked into my top 12 for fantasy right now. And then Christian McCaffrey, it's just more of the same. Him just being electric with him. I think he'll get a ton of volume with Bridgewater there.
Yeah, see, I was kind of worried about Christian McCaffrey because when Bridgewater went for the Saints there, Alvin Kamara kind of lost a little bit of his value. But you're saying you think that Christian McCaffrey still gets the volume there, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, last year, with the Saints' offense is a lot different. And they were really trying to throw the ball and force it to Michael Thomas last year.
Good point. All right, Miguel, what are your thoughts on Bridgewater in Carolina?
Yeah, I feel very much the same way. I think I want DJ Moore and I want Christian McCaffrey, and you can have the rest of the offense.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be buying much Ian Thomas, drafting him at all, or Curtis Samuel, unless, again, comes down to price. If he's extremely cheap in a draft, then, maybe I take a shot as a, flex bye-week flyer type guy that maybe gets like a 50-yard touchdown randomly. But yeah, I think this pretty much is the death nail for Curtis Samuel truthers and hoping that he breaks out, because Teddy Bridgewater is not going to support two wide receivers that are top 24. I mean, the likelihood is very low. Very few quarterbacks can do it. And the odds that it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater coming off of a 3-year break?
Yeah.
Is it 3 years or 4?
Might be 4, yeah. I think
lost count.
Long time.
It's been a long time since he was a starting quarterback in the NFL, like legit starting quarterback. So, yeah, I'm all in on those two. I think this could be a huge year for DJ Moore, even with Teddy Bridgewater. If there's any owners out there that are scared because it's Teddy Bridgewater, I'll be buying. But if there's not, I'm probably still going to try to go after him in some form or fashion.
Yeah, good point. All right, let's talk about a couple tight ends. Obviously, we talked about Austin Hooper that left Atlanta. So Atlanta goes out and gets Hayden Hurst. And Ryan, I want to go to you first because you are a Ravens fan, and I know you've seen him up close. What do you think of Hayden Hurst in Atlanta? I know he was taken actually over Mark Andrews in the draft a few years ago, and he was supposed to be the pass-catching tight end, ended up not being that way. You think he can kind of revive his career here in Atlanta?
Yeah, man, he's taking over Lamar Jackson too. But yeah, I think he's a good skill set to fill in for Hooper. He's really athletic for being a tight end. He can stretch the field. He has really good hands. He's a good blocker, so he can stay on the field on all three downs. He should be a guy who's a good safety blanket for Matt Ryan. I don't think he's that big of a drop-off from Hooper. I think he's a talented enough player. I just think he got overshadowed by Andrews, who was just played fantastic the last couple of years. He's somebody I'm going to be buying low in a lot of places. Fortunately, I have him anywhere I don't own Mark Andrews. I own Hayden Hurst.
Nice.
And some both in Dynasty. So I've held on to him for a while because I thought if he'd had the starting chance, you don't just take a guy in the first round and he flops this time. You gotta give him a couple of years, and this is his opportunity.
Yeah, and truth be told, I mean, he wasn't necessarily unsuccessful with the Ravens, right? I mean, he was a pretty good blocker. He was one of their best blocking tight ends, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I think,
yeah, he was a good blocker, and he played very well in the games where Andrews was hurt.
Yeah, so I don't think he was necessarily a bust, and I think Atlanta will give him the opportunity, and he could definitely be a tight end on the rise, especially, like I said, in this tight end landscape. You know, you basically catch a touchdown and a couple passes a game or something, and you're pretty much a top 5 tight end. Miguel, what are your thoughts on Hayden Hurst in Atlanta?
Right, and that's a good primer whenever you're talking about tight ends, is that it's an incredibly fickle position, and really the top 3, maybe top 5 matter, and after that it's just a crapshoot,
yep.
Right? Especially on a weekly basis. I'm not a Hayden Hurst guy. I don't think this is going to be a huge move for Atlanta. I think this is a downgrade from Austin Hooper, but I'll give you a few stats here that maybe there is some light there at the end of the tunnel for Hayden Hurst, where we buying low on him could pay off, and that's that he had a 2.67 cushion, which ranked number 4, so that is an incredibly efficient stat for him. He had a 90.9 true catch rate, which ranked number 6. So I think those are a couple key stats there that could really play into Hayden Hurst being a really efficient tight end, and his yards per route was 8.7, which also ranked him as the number 7 tight end. Now that was on 41% of the Ravens snaps, and with Lamar Jackson, who had one of the greatest seasons ever as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So a lot of context and grains of salt that need to be taken with this potentially, but it's not all over for Hayden Hurst. But it just depends on where he's going to go in ADP. If he's outside the top 12 and I'm doing late round tight end, sure, I'll take a stab probably. When you got Matt Ryan there, I think you kind of have to.
Yeah.
But is he someone that I've got, long-term hopes for to be the next, like, George Kittle or Travis Kelce or anything like that? Absolutely not.
Yeah. For our less stat centric fans out there, explain what that cushion means as far as the stat you gave there, that he's a 3rd or 4th in the league, you said. Explain what that means exactly.
Hold on, let me pull it up, but it's... So it's the average cushion afforded to the receiver by his assigned defender on each route run. So it's really just the amount of space that's between him and the defender. So he's got 2.6 yards between him and the defender. So
right, so that comes down to like separation and being able to run routes, precisely,
right,
and getting that separation. So yeah, that's definitely a good stat right there. I like that. All right. Let's move to a less fancy signing here. This was sort of under the radar. I just want to get your thoughts on it. You think this guy's washed or if he has any value whatsoever, especially like in a tight end premium league. But Mr. Jimmy Graham goes to the Bears. Ryan, what do you think of that move?
So, the Bears have $16.5 million a year. A lot of the other tight ends in most of the league.
Yeah.
But it's more just garbage there. I don't want any part of it. None of their tight ends are good, and I don't think Jimmy Graham's going to move the needle. I don't know how he has bamboozled the league into paying him over and over again. As a salesperson, his agent's my hero.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Miguel, you made some kind of noises over there too. Not a fan of that move?
What are the Bears doing? All of their moves have just been giant head scratchers. I mean, that is a poorly run organization right now. The fact that they couldn't identify that Mitch Trubisky, and I'll just go off tangent here, that he is not the guy, and they're still going after, giving him the Blake Bortles treatment just like Jacksonville did. They're
right.
Like, hey, another year of this. What could possibly go wrong? And then you've got a dumpster fire at tight end where you've already burned through a ton of money there, and so you're like, hey, you know what's going to solve this problem? Throw in more money at it with a broken down tight end. Yeah, this isn't going to do anything. No, I'm not drafting Graham. No one's trading for Graham. Nobody wants Graham. He's going to be on the waiver wire, and no one's going to care. Because at the end of the day, even if you have some belief that he still has talent, he's still tied to Mitch Trubisky, so who cares?
Yeah, agreed.
They probably think Bill O'Brien will give him a second-round pick for him.
There you go.
That's true. They could probably flip this to Bill O'Brien for like 10 first-round picks.
They're playing the long game on that one. Good stuff. All right, this next one here is not really fantasy relevant, but being a fellow Niner fan, I want to get your thoughts on it. With DeForest Buckner being traded to the Colts for the 13th overall pick. One, do you think we'll miss DeForest Buckner this season? And two, do you think we go offense there with that 13th overall pick, possibly a receiver?
So, as a fan, I mean, DeForest Buckner as a person was great. He was the type of guy you want on your team, you want representing your community, all of that. So, for those reasons, I'll absolutely miss DeForest Buckner. He was a fantastic first-round pick. He panned out. Everything went well while he was here, and he played lights out. Now, as far as getting traded for the 13th overall pick, this is amazing. We can't pay everyone on the front line, and the drop off between Buckner and Armstead, really, going over their entire history, there is a drop off. Going over just last year, there isn't much of a drop off.
Right.
So if you think Armstead really turned the corner and he's going to be that guy going forward, then you got basically a Buckner-like player, a little bit cheaper, and now we've got the money to go pay Bosa in the future and Kittle, which is really what this move was about, is that we've got to pay other guys that are, just as important, that are going to be coming up down the line. At the end of the day, your defensive tackle isn't going to be the guy that wins you the Super Bowl. So, I mean, just ask Aaron Donald. He's the most dominant D tackle in the league, and they didn't win a Super Bowl. So,
Good point.
They're a luxury to have if you have them, but they're not a necessity or preventing you from winning that. So, from this perspective, I'm absolutely glad that we did that. It's a great cap move. And the fact that we had traded away our second, third, and fourth round pick. Am I right on that, Jeff? Was it those three that are all gone?
I think our next one.
We were lacking draft capital a lot. So now that we've got the 13th overall pick, it gives us more flexibility with what we can do with the 31st overall. Hopefully that means trade down and acquire a second and a third.
Yeah.
And then we can use that 13th overall pick on, I'm hearing offensive tackle.
Yeah,
there's about 5 who are worth taking in the top 10, top 15.
Joe Staley's only got another year there. We've already got McGlinchey on one side. That Mekhi Becton, I don't know where he's projected to go. I'm not up to speed on the offensive tackles and mock drafting and where they all rank. But man, just watching that kid's combine and his tape, he's extremely athletic, and that's the type of guy that Shanahan would love to have on the offensive line. So I could totally see it being offensive tackle, but that's not exciting for anyone. So it's hopefully a wide receiver like a CD Lamb or something like that. Right.
Yeah, I was thinking
a fantasy perspective.
I wasn't even thinking about offensive line, but you're right. I mean, Joe Staley is going to be retired soon, and we need to replace him. So that's definitely a move I can see them making. I was thinking either cornerback or receiver there. But yeah, offensive line, definitely. I think that's a good call there. Ryan, I know you're not a Niners fan, but I know you like doing those mock drafts and such. I know you probably haven't done one since this move happened, but what do you think of that 13th overall pick? Who do you think would be there for us?
I think you have a chance of good line. I wasn't ready for this one. Brady Brown, give me 1 second.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, I like the move a lot for them. I think you could definitely there's about 5 offensive linemen who could go to the top 15. I mean, Becton might be a little bit of a long shot, man. The way he produced. If he makes it past Arizona, I'd be real upset. But now you get a line there. There's about 3 good edge rushers. Oh, you guys don't need that at all. Edge rusher. Lambert, Judy, one of them will be there for sure. Yeah, I mean, you have your pick.
Actually, we could use an edge rusher. The DeForest, his knee is kind of iffy, and I think after this year, he's doesn't have a lot of guaranteed money, so that could be a move where we go a year early, go get that edge rusher, and then when DeForest is unable to play because he needs his knee injections or whatever, or his maintenance time, then you can plug that kid in. So yeah, that could be a good move too.
So yeah, I did a mock earlier today just for Ravens. I wanted to bring that up. So offensive lines: Tristan Wirfs, Becton, Jedrick Willis, and all went top 7.
Oh wow!
Geez. All right, so we're not getting those guys.
No, but there's still yeah. So yeah, by top 10 there was 4 gone.
Wow!
But there's still a lot. There's a lot of offensive linemen. Corner could be something. You guys could shoot for me. Rich Sherman ain't getting younger.
Yep. Yeah, that's
who's a corner that we would be eyeing?
Probably that spot. C.J. Henderson is probably the best available since Okuda's going to be 100% gone. So he's probably your next best bet. He should be there.
Yeah, Keller Witherspoon isn't all that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, Judy went in the mock that I did today. Because I did it just for one team on Draft Simulator. That's who they had San Fran taken.
Oh, nice. I think we're pretty much in a position where we can take best available out of those 3 positions. If there happens to be one there that we like, we just take them and move on with that.
Or you can just trade back to 28 so Baltimore can get a linebacker or edge rusher.
Yeah, it's a good call. All right, so the next few that I have on here are kind of minor. They're not major moves here, but we're running up against the clock here, so I'm just going to kind of talk about them just really quickly. Obviously, we talked about Mariota going to the Raiders. No fantasy relevance there, I don't think. He's going to be a backup there if he ends up taking over for Carr. I'm not too excited about it. Cooper re-signs with Dallas, obviously. We like that if you own Cooper because they did so well, him and Dak Prescott together, so that's definitely good. Jordan Howard to the Dolphins is another one that's kind of sort of a throw-in. I think Dolphins probably still draft a running back. I think Jordan Howard is going to be sort of that Carlos Hyde type role from a few years ago in Cleveland where they signed him to a contract. He started the season off, and then they eventually turned it over to Nick Chubb, so I think Howard is going to be in that kind of role there. Is there anything else that I may have missed, Ryan or Miguel, that y'all wanted to mention before we move on to the next thing?
No, fine. I think you hit everybody. We hit all the quarterbacks, and
I love Mariota with the Raiders. Love it.
And no running back, and nobody cares about running backs for free agency yet again.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Melvin Gordon, man, he's just
sitting there. Yep.
Wondering why his phone's not ringing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was like this. It was like this last year, too.
Yep. Exactly right. All right, take a quick commercial break, and then we come back. We're going to talk about Miguel's PSI for wide receivers, and we'll kind of talk about what that means. He's been on the last couple of years talking about it. It's a great model he has for dynasty prospects coming into the league. So hang tight.
In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. Going for 2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
All right, guys, welcome back. I'm here with Ryan and Miguel, and we just got done talking about all the free agency and trades that happened over the last couple days. Now we're going to look ahead to the NFL draft at some of these receivers coming into the NFL. Miguel has a great model he's used over the last couple years. He's come on the show to talk about it. It's called the PSI. Miguel, I'll kind of let you give you a rundown on how it works and what exactly it looks at.
Yeah, so PSI stands for Prospect Success Indicator, and this was something that I started, 4 years ago now, which seems just like yesterday. And over the years, I've continued to update it. So we had in year one was V1, and over the years, I've continued to add different metrics to it that help kind of improve the success rate of the model. Things that I've come across from other minds on Twitter and so forth. So overall, it's a probabilities model that measures incoming prospects relative to the average top 24 wide receiver prospect profile of the last 10 years. So when you're looking at it, the higher they rank, the higher a prospect ranks, the more they mirror that top 24 profile. Overall, there have been 54 wide receivers to break out since 2010. 51 of those have measured in the top 50th percentile, meaning they've met or exceeded the median. And 51% of those, so 26 of the 51, were tier 1 prospects. So top 3 tiers make up 44 of the 51, so that's 86%. And tier 1, just on its own, if we're comparing it just versus like a round 1 draft capital, tier 1's hitting at a 48.1%, versus just looking at draft capital for guys drafted in the first round is hitting at a 29.6%. So it's a good way of kind of looking at players and seeing who's kind of over and undervalued. So I would always say the best way to use this model is as a comparison tool versus ADP. So if you see that a guy that's in tier 1 is going in the top 5, then he's appropriately valued. If he's going in the second round, then you've got an undervalued asset there. On the flip side, if you have a guy who's like tier 8, which is like a 2% hit rate, going in the top 5 or even in the first round, then that's probably a big warning flag to avoid. If you've only got one first round pick in your dynasty league, do you really want to spend it on a guy that's likely only going to hit at a 2% rate? Probably not.
Yep, good call. Good call. All right, let's go ahead and look at some of these top receivers here. Like I said, we are up against the clock here, so we're going to have to fly through these. We won't touch on some of the well-known guys. I want to start here at the bottom with Denzel Mims. He's sort of made a name for himself at the Combine. He's been climbing draft boards pretty much everywhere. Give me your thoughts on Mims and how did he do in your model?
Right. So just to preface this and to provide some context, so this is looking at my model with draft capital applied. And so what we did is I used Ryan's mock draft from a few weeks ago to apply the draft capital. And so in Brian's mock, he had Denzel Mims going in the third round. And that vaulted Denzel Mims up into a second tier of
pretty
for
combine,
the class.
by the way. The draft or the mock. I'm just throwing that out there.
That was pre-combine. It was a while ago. But Denzel Mims was the most athletic wide receiver at the combine. The athleticism matters in athletics. Is it predictive of whether or not they're going to do well? No, but you want to see them check those boxes, and he was the most athletic wide receiver there by far. I think he's a really good prospect. I think tier 2 is actually a really good spot for him. And I'd be excited to see him land. Where'd you have him going? New Orleans at the time? I mean, that'd be a really exciting spot with Drew Brees and a high-flying offense. He makes those crazy he's got great body control. He makes crazy catches along the sideline to pair with someone like a Mike Thomas. And then you still have my boy Traquan Smith who can go deep. That's a killer trio of wide receivers right there if New Orleans gets them. But, yeah, Denzel Mims is definitely someone I'm high on, so I'd love to see him go.
All right, and Ryan, you had him mocked in the third round. You said pre-combine, so you were already pretty high on him to begin with. Do you think he helped himself move up those draft charts a little bit?
Yeah, I'd probably move him in that early second round range. I know some people are getting the first, saying first, but there's so much depth at wide receiver. I think it could cause them to fall a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable with him in the early second.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Let's move on to the next one on the list here, Mr. KJ Hamler. And, we've done a couple rookie shows here, and he's not one that we've talked a whole lot about. Ryan had him in his mock draft, drafted to his own team, Baltimore. Obviously, Ryan likes him for sure. So give me your thoughts on KJ Hamler.
KJ Hamler is not someone that I'm a big fan of, mostly due to his size. Let me quickly look it up here. So he is he's 5'8". Is that right? He's 5'8", yeah. But I mean he's got good weight to him, so his BMI and his pounds per inch are great. But he's basically this year's who was it? Greg Dortch.
Oh,
I mean, guys this size just don't get drafted very highly. I mean, the closest comp you can get to is Deshaun Jackson. But Deshaun Jackson was, I believe, more productive, and he's a little taller. He's 5'10", not 5'8". So that is even kind of it's a close comp, but it's not an accurate comp.
What about the guy across from him on the field if he gets drafted to Baltimore? What about Hollywood Brown? I mean, he's a smaller guy too.
Right, yeah. I mean, Hollywood Brown is great from, if he gives you a big play here and there, but he's not someone I'm ever going to trust to be that consistent producer, along the lines of DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Larry Fitzgerald, guys like that we talk about for years and years and years. So KJ Hamler, me personally, I'm out. But the mock here, when you put him in the second round, vaulted him all the way to tier 1. So the mock or the model likes him, which usually when I go against my own model, I don't fare so well. So maybe I should like KJ Hamler more. But
I think that 5'8's gonna hurt his draft stock.
But that height's gonna hurt his draft stock. I don't think he goes in the second round. I think you're gonna see KJ Hamler in the fourth round.
Yeah, probably later now, man. Listen, like you said, he's small.
He's too small.
They were under the belief he's gonna be like 5'10", 5'11", and he ain't that.
Yep. No. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Ryan, what did you see about him that you liked that you put him in Baltimore? Obviously, you thought he was a little bit taller, so that would have been, one thing.
I like him as a good slot. I like him as a slot option to basically add some speed side Willie Snead. He's really good in open space. He was good run after the catch, but that size, he catches a safety across the middle. He's just going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just no easy way to put it. It's not for me anymore. It was earlier in the process. Less knowledge,
right?
And go from there.
Yeah, like you said, it was pre-combine, so that definitely changes things.
There was like a mini highlight reel of him just getting pushed around the field, like on plays where he wasn't involved, where he's just getting knocked down. He's constantly on the floor, and I'm like, yeah, that's not getting any better at the next level.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
I remember, who was it? AJ Jenkins?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, his
whole camp was him getting pushed onto the ground and not getting up and all that. That was his entire training camp his rookie year. And that was always etched in my mind. So when I see that, it's just a big red flag.
Yeah, that was more than just his rookie year. That was his entire career, basically. I think he had one catch for us, I think, for a first-round pick. That's crazy. That's got to be like got to be a record for a first-round pick to have one catch with the team that drafted him. All right, let's move up to, let's see. I'm going to try to pick somebody else that we haven't talked a lot on the show already. Actually, the next guy on that list, the third one up, is Brandon Aiyuk. We haven't talked a ton about him on the show already, so give me your thoughts on Brandon a little bit. Ryan had him being mocked to Denver, so give me your thoughts on him.
I think that's a good pick for Denver rather than going first round with Ruggs. But this one actually surprised me. I mean, I'm the one who builds this, so you think I would know it like the back of my hand. But I had no idea Brandon Aiyuk was liked this much by the model. Personally, I was just I've been out on Brandon Aiyuk since day one. Just being the JUCO transfer who comes in and wasn't able to beat out Harry from last year, and then he just finally gets his big break as a senior. Goes all out. Those guys have a very small hit rate in the NFL. They just don't typically pan out that way. But he meets a lot of the thresholds that the model likes and then looks for. So especially when he's going here in the second round to Denver, I was expecting him to be faster at the combine. On his tape, you see him just pull away from guys. That made it look like he had 4.3 speed, but he came in with. Was it 4.5?
4.5 something.
Yeah,
4.5 flat. Yeah, he came in 4.5 flat. But he does have a very solid vertical, 40 inches, and a broad jump of 128. So he is explosive. He's got big hands at 9 3/4 inch. So there's a lot to like here. I don't know. He's maybe he's probably going to be like my Preston Williams.
Yeah.
This late bloomer with a huge dominator rating. That broke out late, that, maybe you get something out of him, but personally I'm not going to be drafting him all that much. But again, he's not going in the first round of Dynasty mocks. What is he, like a second round pick?
Third
round pick?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, if you're going for the big play, explosive guy who you can use as a flex and get you massive points, every so often, that might be a good pick. But yeah.
All right, Ryan. What do you had him going to Denver? You think you'd still have him going there? You think you still like him for Denver?
Yeah, I liked him in that area. I kind of did this on where like people were talking more than where I had him ranked. He's my wide receiver 11 right now, so I'm middle of the road with him. But he's a ton of upside. He's very explosive. His run after the catch is unbelievable. He knows how to make guys miss in space. He contributed as a punt and kick returner, which is all good signs for that. I think how you mentioned his explosiveness with the vertical broad jump, I think that's what made him look faster on tape other than his long speed, because that really pops with that quick burst. So I think that's where he wins, and I think he'd be a nice compliment to Courtland Sutton from a team building standpoint, because he does a lot of things different than Sutton and brings a lot of versatility to the team.
Yeah, he'd be a perfect fit in Denver.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, in the effort of time here, I'm just going to skip over a couple guys and get to someone that I want to talk about and see how the model really liked him. So the next guy, I'm going to go ahead and just give it.
Going to.
What's that?
That's how I know exactly who you're going to.
You do, huh? Okay.
Jeez, where are we going?
All right, so
have to know.
the next one on the list was Laviska Shenault at what is that? He's the 6th. So the 5th was Justin Jefferson, and then we got Jalen Reagor, who's got some injury history. But I want to know about T. Higgins. I want you to kind of give me your thoughts on T. Higgins a little bit, and with that combine that he had, what kind of player can he be, Miguel?
Yeah, T. Higgins isn't someone I'm super excited about. The whole process, this whole offseason, he was one of those guys that I just kept looking at, and it's one of those things, like when you build out something like this, you kind of start getting a feel for guys as you're punching in numbers and you're looking at everything before they even, do anything. And he's one of those guys that just gives me just overall bad vibe. I think he's just so overvalued. That Clemson logo will really lift your stock in front of the eyes of many people.
Yeah.
And, you come in with a 4.59 40. 4.54 is what he ran at the pro day. A lot of people adjust an extra, 5/100ths of a second to 4.59, and then you got a 31-inch vertical.
Right.
31-inch vert?
Yeah, that was what I was worried about.
That's gross. That was really bad. And then, he's got his 4.53 shuttle, which, shows a lack of agility. He just barely met the threshold of dominator rating, where he's a 30% guy, right at 30%. He broke out at 19.8. So I don't know. There's enough here to like, and so I get why the model likes him. But personally, he just looks like Mike Williams all over again.
Let me ask you this, because
maybe the one that was promised.
Because Ryan had him, I think, had him in the first round, right? That was his draft capital for his mock draft.
I did, to Buffalo.
22nd pick.
So let's say he dropped down to second or even third round. How does that affect his ranking in your model, do you think?
He'll drop a tier or two on that, which at that point, you're looking at a 13% hit rate on a guy with a 31-inch vert who just barely meets a lot of the requirements. Yeah, I just can't. There's just nothing there for me that excites me about T. Higgins. He's just not the type of receiver that I'm into. I think he's the type of receiver that the NFL used to like and build offenses around, but not anymore.
Yeah.
So I think he's a supplemental guy. He's a wide receiver 2 on teams. I don't think he's ever going to be the alpha dog.
Fair enough. Ryan, so post-combine, where do you think you have T. Higgins going in your mock drafts?
I think he's I think I have him more towards the second round now in mocks. You made a really good point with the way you view how the NFL used to view receivers like that compared to now. And that was a really good way of putting that. And I think that's something that is going to hurt T. Higgins a little bit. The vertical made no sense to me. When he played above the rim so well. I guess he was just good at using his height. So that was shocking. The 40's fine. Anything under the 4.6 range, I was going to be happy with him. But I think he's a good complimentary guy. Heavy red zone threat. Him being Mike Williams isn't a bad thing. He could be a wide receiver 2 at the next level. for fantasy wise, like a low end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I'm completely comfortable with that, but
yeah,
he's a guy who's dropping down my dynasty boards just a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I think he's a wide receiver 3 for fantasy purposes. He's going to be a complimentary guy for whatever team he goes to. If he happens to be lucky enough to go to a high volume offense where 2 guys are supported, then hooray.
Yeah,
that'd be great to see. But more than likely, very few of those landing spots exist. So more than likely, he's not going there. But yeah, it's all going to come down to where he lands in rookie ADP. I don't know where he's going right now. But that's something I'm going to be putting together with this model later on, is where I'll be kind of ranking, comparing the tiers of where guys go versus their ADP, and we'll be finding who's over and undervalued at that point.
All right. Let's do one more on the top 10 here, and then I have a question that was asked on Facebook that I'm going to ask you about. But let's go to one more guy. Let's do Henry Ruggs. He's your number 3 overall. Of course, CeeDee Lamb and Judy were the top 2. But Henry Ruggs with that ridiculous 40 time, what did that do with his stock in the PSI?
Yeah, that did a whole lot of nothing. He jumped up to the tier 7, and just for what that means for people is that tier 7, we've had one breakout in 10 years. So that gives him a 2% hit rate.
Ouch.
So if you want to find a guy who's clearly going, like, we know Henry Ruggs is going to get drafted early. Like, he's going in the first round.
Yep.
That is more than likely going to happen. If he doesn't go first round, he's going the second round. Either way, that's going to put his dynasty value in the first round. And that's where you're going to have to take Ruggs if you want him, which for me makes him incredibly overvalued. Does he have elite athleticism? I'm not even sure he does. He's got elite speed.
Right.
Actually, he never tested agility, so we really don't know. So based off what we do know, he is really athletic in those. So I view him as Terry McLaurin. I mean, my model didn't like Terry McLaurin either. He's very much the same type of receiver. He's got a 17% dominated rating. He never broke out. He's got massive hands, and he's incredibly fast and explosive. So there's things there. I always find it funny that the only videos that people show of him from high school are him doing basketball. Like, where are his football highlights from?
Good point.
Like, that's what matters. Like, what do I care if he can dunk? Like, most of these guys can dunk, I'm sure. Good point. So, yeah, I don't know. I think he's more of an athlete than he is a football player. And I think that'll show. I think he's going to be, to me, he's Marquise Goodwin, but more polished coming out. He's a wide receiver too, a complimentary guy. He's someone who's very popular to go to Denver as well in mock drafts. I think the smarter move is drafting a Brandon Aiyuk later, because I think it's basically you're getting the same guy, just a decoy field stretcher for whoever the alpha is on the other side of the field.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you the 2 questions that we had, one on Facebook and one on YouTube. I'll give you a chance to do some research while I get Ryan's opinion on Henry Ruggs. But
research.
I'm hoping that you can just look it up in your model. But the one question was, where does Chase Claypool fit in your model? And then the other one was, who is the one breakout tier 7 guy you just mentioned? Like, who was the one that broke out? And while you're looking that up, I'm going to go ahead and get Ryan's opinion on Mr. Henry Ruggs and what he thinks of him.
I feel like that could be a whole podcast just on Henry Ruggs debates. But
a whole podcast? Jesus.
I think you do.
You can start a nuclear war with a Henry Ruggs debate.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it could be bad. So I think we've said it like a bajillion times in the show. He's a better football player than a fantasy asset.
Yeah.
What he brings to a football team with keeping defense on his heels is huge. But he's right. He's a wide receiver, too, for a team. He's not an alpha dog. He's going to, even if he does really well and say he's a 1,200-yard receiver, he's going to get that in the way that we saw Brandon Cooks give it to us, where it's just a headache because he's going to have a 160-yard game one week and then catch 2 for 15 the next.
Yeah.
I like Ruggs. He's my top group of wide receivers, like that top 6 for me. But fantasy-wise, I might drop him a little bit. And at his ADP, I'm probably leaning away.
Yeah.
But I love him as a football player, not as much for fantasy.
Yeah, I think if we're looking at this from an NFL standpoint, like I probably want him on my team to stretch the field a little bit, to open up those things, on the field. But as far as fantasy goes, yeah, he's that guy that's going to be your home run hitter. This is the guy you put in if you're playing the number one team in your league and you need that ceiling to hit, or you're playing daily fantasy and maybe he's cheap on daily fantasy and he's your third receiver. You're hoping that just breaks out for a huge game, but not someone you want to plug into your lineup week in and week out. So I agree 100%. Miguel, I hope I gave you enough time to look that up there to see where Chase Claypool ranked, and if you can figure out who that other breakout 7th tier guy was.
Yeah, let's go over question 2 first. That's what I've got pulled up at the moment. So in tier 7, the one guy who broke out was Kelvin Benjamin. And if we go back, that was his rookie year when he broke out. And what happened his rookie year? He had nobody else. Had no one else to throw to. He was a first-round pick. He was a gigantic body, so he got all of the targets. And after that, he fell off the face of the earth.
Yep.
Now, Kelvin Benjamin is nowhere near a comp for a Henry Ruggs. That's the opposite end of the spectrum. So from a guy who maybe is closest to him, who also broke out, and is tier 6 guys like a Robbie Anderson, right? He's got 4.41 speed. He's got an incredible broad jump of 128. But he also had a dominator rating of 35%. He also broke out at age 20. Things that Henry Ruggs did not do.
Good point.
So, yeah, I have a hard time. Like, my model's never going to like these really fast guys who didn't do anything in college. They can be. It's nice to be really athletic, but eventually that's going to catch up with you. Teams can scheme around that.
Right.
Athleticism is a plus, but it's not everything, and so I can't do Ruggs at his ADP.
Fair enough. You got anything on Chase Claypool?
Yeah, let me pull that up really quick. So Chase Claypool and Antonio Gibson are 2 guys that are in here right now, but I don't think they're going to stay, mainly because I think we're all in agreement that neither of them are wide receivers. Antonio Gibson is a running back, and Chase Claypool
tight end
should be a tight end.
Yep.
There's no reason he should be a wide receiver. So they'll likely get removed. But for the time being, he's a tier 4 guy.
Okay.
So what's Gibson while you're there if you have him up? Because I love Antonio Gibson.
Oh, I do too. Right now he's tier 8.
Tier 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I graded him.
Really low draft capital.
He's a guy I actually graded at both positions, and he was much higher at running back.
Yeah, I like him as a running back. I'm probably going to delete both of them out. I mean, I had Darren Waller in here at one point, but obviously became a tight end. So
right.
But I do remember Darren Waller grading pretty well. That was in my very first model that I ever created, and he was up there. But obviously removed him since he changed positions. But hopefully Chase Claypool can be that Darren Waller type tight end in the future.
All right, good stuff. All right, so a couple more questions that I had, and then we'll do our forgotten fantasy player. So I know you're the big, so you're the small school player guy. You always like to find that one guy that's the small school that can potentially do something. I think you had last year. Who was the guy you had last year? I can't think of his name right now.
Last year was Ashton Doolin.
Ashton Doolin, yeah, he plays for the Colts right now, on special teams mostly.
Yes.
But who is your small school guy this year? Do you have one yet?
There really isn't one. I mean, not at the level of a Doolin or a Watson from the year before. The closest we have, I think, is like an Antonio Gandy Golden, but he seems to be a pretty well-known commodity,
right?
Even though he's coming out of Liberty. And then there's Aaron Parker from Rhode Island, who's kind of interesting as a slot receiver. He's not incredibly athletic. Let me see if I can kind of pull up his stuff. He ran a 4.57 40, so he's definitely a slot receiver. He had you thought T. Higgins had a bad vertical. This guy did a 26.5-inch vertical. Yikes. Wow. And 112 broad jump, so just terrible explosive numbers. But he had really good agility, and so if he's a slot receiver, maybe that's all I need him to do.
Yeah.
I don't need him to be incredibly explosive there. So, he's someone I'd probably keep an eye on. He had a 38% dominator rating. For a small school, I like that to be much higher than that. For someone like Ashton Doolin, who I think he was like a 60%.
Right.
when I see that, like, yeah, it's cool. He was at 60%, but that's not how I view him. That to me, that's like great. You were like a 35% guy compared to most. That's like the equivalent is kind of how I look at it.
Right.
So to only be at 38% being at Rhode Island is a little nerve-wracking for me. But he did break out at 18, and that's really the most important thing. That's still an impressive stat to have because not many guys do break out before the age of 19. So I would look at Aaron Parker. I'm not as in love with him as I've been with other guys in the past, but he's small school guys deserve love too, and so I'm sure I'll shower Aaron Parker with some love.
All right, good stuff. All right, the next question I had was any red flags and guys you're avoiding, but I feel like every guy we talked about tonight, you pretty much gave some red flags on. So we're going to go to the next question on there. Is there any sleepers? Is there any guy that's, not a small school guy necessarily, but someone that no one's really talking about that could be like the next sort of Terry McLaurin where we drafted him super late, or Darius Slayton, a guy like that we could look at in our drafts that might be a breakout player for a cheap value?
Yes, here's where I hit on Darius Slayton last year. Oh my God, now the pressure's on.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Tyler Johnson and Bryan Edwards are really good values at this point, but they're not necessarily sleepers. I think everyone's pretty much well aware of them. God, Tyler Johnson, man, what an enigma that guy is, especially within the NFL circles. But if I have to dig deep, I think the only one guy that I like is Gabriel Davis from UCF. He's a really interesting football player. He hits on everything you want, just barely. He's one of those guys that, like, when we're doing models, you have thresholds, and if I was saying, like, how far past the threshold is he takes, like, one step over it, and he's like, "Hell, did it." And so he hits on everything you want to see, right? He's got a 32% dominator rate. He broke out at 19. He ran a 4.54 40, 35-inch vert, 124-inch broad jump. He didn't put up the best agility scores, a 4.59 shuttle and a 7.08 3-cone, but, man, all the times from the combine, quick rant, were horrendous. I don't know what happened this year, but they were so far off the norm that I'm not even sure if I can trust these numbers this year. And now that pro days are all canceled, this is going to be such a weird year for athletic testing. That's going to make it's going to make grading these guys in this model for 2020 just, not impossible, but just more challenging.
Right.
So Gabriel Davis is not a guy that's getting a lot of love amongst the draft Twitter community. The only other guy I really ever see tweeting about it is Jesse Reeves. He and I seem to really like Gabriel Davis. I think he's someone I definitely would take a look at. Right now, without draft capital, he's a tier 1 prospect. But we all know he's not going in the first round, or likely even the second round. So he's probably going to drop with draft capital, probably be like a tier 3 guy. But that's potentially some good value there. It shows that his talent is greater than what his draft capital is likely to be, only because this is such a deep class that you don't need to take wide receivers so early. So he's probably going to be a victim to that. But, he's someone I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. I don't know what his rookie ADP is. I don't really keep track of that at this stage.
It's not.
There's no ADP on him at all.
There's not.
I mean, he's like 4th rounder then.
Yeah, I've done like 3 or 4 mocks now, and I haven't seen him go yet.
Yep.
I mean, he should at least be a 3rd round pick at this point.
He's on my watch list for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm going to add him to the list as well, because like you mentioned, last year you called out Darius Slayton to me, and I took Darius Slayton at my last pick in the 3rd round, and panned out quite well for me. I appreciate you calling him out for me.
Yeah, Darius Slayton was the arbitrage Paris Campbell, and look at that.
Yep.
Actually, he went 4.6 in my mock that I did.
Woo, someone out there is noticing, so that's great. But
I have Michael Pittman at 9, by the way.
Michael Pittman? Nice.
Yeah, love Pittman.
So, yeah.
All right, good stuff. All right, Ryan, did you have anybody you wanted to ask him about before we move into our forgotten fantasy player?
I do, actually. Hold on a second. Yeah, oh, golly. Hold on. Michael Pittman was one of the guys.
How's Michael Pittman fare in your model, Miguel? I know you don't have draft capital yet, but where does he kind of rank?
Yeah, I'll be quick because I just realized my computer's about to die.
All right.
Just skip the forgotten player then, man.
Michael Pittman is currently in tier 5, so he's on the right side of the fence.
All right, good stuff. All right, let's go ahead and hit the forgotten fantasy player then.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, Miguel, you got some tough competition here because we had some really good ones the past couple of weeks, man. So you gotta come strong here. Who do you got?
Well, since we've got 49er roots, I feel like I've got to always bring that when I come on the show. So how about Antonio Bryant?
Oh, nice. I like it.
Remember Antonio Bryant?
Yes.
He bursted onto the scene as a rookie, as a 21-year-old, put up 733 yards with the Dallas Cowboys, 6 touchdowns. He had a 16.7 yards per reception. I mean, this dude just screamed baller. But he had a lot of off-the-field issues at a time when the NFL, you could not have off-the-field issues, right? Like, a lot of those things, you were getting kicked out of the league pretty quick. So he was moving around, bouncing around teams. He got traded from Dallas, went to Cleveland, stayed there a couple years, and then came to San Francisco, where he was awesome for a little bit, and then he got a DUI on 101, and then that was it.
That was it.
Never heard from him again. But he put up a couple thousand. Actually, we did hear him from the next year. He put up 1,200 yards with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So he had a great fantasy season then, where he had 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was just such an enigma at the time. A lot of talent there that just kind of got wasted, unfortunately. But he was someone that was definitely big in fantasy at the time.
Yeah, agreed. And actually, he's a great Twitter follow, too. I think I follow him on Twitter. He's got some good stuff out there. And at one point, he was getting mistaken for the other AB. Yeah,
he's. Oh God, I never even thought of that. Oh wow, that's funny.
He followed me, and then once I started following him, unfollowed me immediately. So I do not follow him on Twitter. Oh, because I went to look back. I'm like, this dude's. I'm like, this dude's from went to Pitt. Like, he's running from my home, from where I'm from.
Yeah.
No, he followed me and unfollowed me. Nah.
Yeah.
that's a weak move. Don't do that, people.
Yeah, it was quite hilarious when AB was going through all his troubles. Antonio Brown was going through his, and I think Bryant's Twitter handle is very similar, and he was getting killed for things that weren't even him. So it was quite funny.
People are so dumb.
Exactly. All right, real quick before your computer dies, Miguel, give us your Twitter handle, where we can follow you at, and what kind of stuff you're working on right now besides your PSI.
Yeah, you can follow me at Dynasty Guru FF on Twitter. With the Fantasy Headliners, I'll be doing some work, I think, here for Player Profiler for their draft guide as well, so you'll probably see my name pop up there. And then you'll see me do some YouTube videos with the Headliners here soon. Nice,
good stuff. Ryan, what you got, man? Give me your Twitter handle and what you're working on.
Find me, Ryan Sirifoss at Fancy FB Connect. Draft guide for Dynasty Draft Room is still posted on my pinned things. Go buy it. It's awesome. You don't have anything to do. You're stuck inside. Pick it up. I'm going to do a post-free agency mock draft next week for Going for 2. Because as we saw tonight, this one is super duper out of date.
Yeah.
I'll probably do another 3-rounder, and everything should be close to finalized then. And and here every Tuesdays again, and hopefully we'll be recording some more War Room soon.
Definitely.
I was gonna say, if you guys want any players on the War Room, just let us know.
Yeah, definitely let us know, because we got some on our list here, but we definitely need some more to hit before the combine. Obviously, so guys, you can follow me at Jeff Lambert 77 on Twitter. I did want to promo real quick. I created an NFL draft daily fantasy game. Basically, you draft a team of prospects, and depending on where they get drafted in the real NFL draft, you earn fantasy points. So if you're interested in that, you can DM me on Twitter. Send an email to goingfor2fantasysports@gmail.com, or hit me up on Facebook if you want to play. It's $5 per lineup, with half of the proceeds going to charity. It's a pretty cool contest I came up with. I mean, basically it's like playing daily fantasy, only you're just doing with NFL prospects. So definitely hit me up on that, guys. And with that, that's a wrap.